Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video. My name is Tilly and I'm a strength and conditioning coach with my bachelor's and my master's in exercise and sports science. If you're new here, it would be amazing if you could like and subscribe because it'll really help the channel grow and it's always good to see some support. It'll also mean that you get to stay up to date with some really cool sports science discussions and you'll get to have a deeper look at the research behind them. I am absolutely positive that you don't want to miss out on that. So today we're going to be talking about some tips that I have for more advanced lifters. As a coach, I think these tips apply to everyone, but I particularly expect these things from more advanced clients or lifters. So without further ado, let's jump into it. Tip number one is to train through injuries. Now don't attack me just yet. I completely stand behind this. I've spent the last 5 years with chronic hip pain and I have had to learn this tip the hard way. When we get injured, it is so upsetting, frustrating, and just plain demotivating. I'm completely sympathetic to that. However, if you take time out completely from training every time you get injured, then you risk coming back more prone to injury and possibly in a position that is more worse off than where you started. So if you have a sprained wrist, for example, go to the gym and train the other arm. Go train the other side of your body. Go train your legs. I made it to the gym when I was on crutches to train my upper body and to train my other leg that wasn't injured. Training is a net positive. You get all the happy hormones flowing through you, things like growth hormone increase. There's even a thing called cross education, and that just means that if I train my right arm, I can still get some adaptations in my left arm, even though it isn't training. One of my professors theorized that training through injuries is actually one of the reasons why there's less time out for injury in sport in the US, because they're really able to push athletes. You can still consistently train around certain issues. You just can't completely remove yourself from training every time you have a niggle or an injury. You need to make the best out of a bad situation, essentially. What do you guys think? Do you have any experience with this? Tip number two is to stop overcomplicating things. Just because you have a higher training age, or you can move more weight, or you can move faster, does not mean that you have to do fancy shit to see improvements. You never ever graduate from basic movement patterns and basic training principles. They apply throughout your training career. Let's take a squat, for example. The only way a squat is going to look different from a beginner to an advanced athlete is most likely better technique and more weight on the bar. The exercises themselves don't really have to change. So take a breather, remember the basics, and stop copying bullshit that you see on Instagram. If you're a team sports athlete, for example, then a more advanced workout might look like including some weightlifting derivatives or doing higher volume power workouts. But doing random combinations of exercises and just beating yourself into oblivion doesn't make you an advanced athlete. Tip number three is to be honest and patient with yourself. If you've been training for a couple years, by this point in your training career, you need to be taking accountability for what's going wrong. You could have the best coach in the world, you could have the best program in the world, and if you don't show up and get the work done, you're no different to a beginner. Of course, this tip applies to everybody, but it particularly annoys me when I see people who've been training for a long time complaining about why they're plateauing and blaming everybody else instead of holding themselves accountable. I've definitely been guilty of this. An example might be when my partner is writing my programs and I'm saying, yes, I can absolutely make it to the gym 6 days a week, and then I don't make it to the gym 6 days a week, and then I complain about the program having 6 days a week. This is the same when people complain about a program being too hard or not seeing results quick enough. Are you doing everything else right? Are you prioritizing your recovery? Are you taking care of yourself outside the gym to complement the stuff that you're doing inside the gym? All of these things add up. It is so important that you are able to realistically judge what level of training you are at and what you're actually capable of doing. I mean, you see this every time somebody ego lifts in the gym. Don't overextend yourself because you should be able to lift a certain amount of weight or because you should be able to do a particular movement. Everything takes time and gains slow down as you get more developed. When everyone's selling quick fixes or magical pre-workouts that are going to help you and boost your gains, it can be tempting, but you just have to remember it doesn't really work. What will pay off is accountability and consistency in your training and your recovery protocols. There is no shortcut. That brings me to my next tip, which is tip number 4. Do not neglect your warm-up. Warm-ups are usually the part of the workout that gets left out or the part of the workout that people completely skip altogether. But they can be an amazing tool to help you get the most out of your training session. We all know that there are loads of benefits to warm-ups, like increasing your strength and power output, increasing the blood flow or temperature to your muscles. But when I say don't neglect your warm-ups, what I mean is for you to plan them like you would the other aspects of your training program. You need to program variation into them. Your warm-ups should change depending on what phase of training you're in and what kind of lifts you're going to perform that session. We all know that our our bodies adapt to stimuli that they're exposed to. So if you go in and do the same warm-up day in and day out, it will eventually become less effective. Your body will stop responding in the same way to the warm-up as it did in the beginning. So you need to change up your warm-up, and you need to progress it using the same principles of variation and progressive overload. That way your warm-up can improve, as does your current level of fitness and ability. On that same note, if you're planning a deload week, or you're going through a period of training where you're training slightly less, then your warm-up can follow that pattern. It doesn't always have to be the most intense thing ever. I'm gonna do a full video on warm-ups though, so I'm gonna leave that for later. And the final tip for advanced lifters is to stop training to failure. I'm gonna say this so much that I sound like a broken record, and I will be the first to tell you I understand how cool it looks on TikTok when people are like pushing themselves to their absolute limit. There is something so admirable about seeing people challenge themselves in that way. I love seeing the videos of people training really, really hard. But in the long term, training to failure is unnecessary and it is absolutely counterproductive. It decreases your power output, your strength progress decreases, and it can even limit your ability to put on muscle. It can limit your hypertrophic potential. So yes, you can film like once a month doing it on TikTok or for the gram or whatever, but stop training to failure if you are genuinely serious about your long-term progress. You can go have a look in further detail at that video of mine that I did on training to failure if you want to learn more about why it's garbage. And that brings us to the end of the video. Those are the 5 tips that I would recommend for advanced lifters and beginner lifters, but particularly, like I said, I expect these things of people who've been training for a long time. If you guys have any tips that you want to share down below, I'd absolutely love to hear them. I'd love to know what you think people who have been training for a longer amount of time should know. As always, I hope you guys liked this video. If you did, make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe. Let me know down below if you had any thoughts or anything like that, and I will catch you guys next time. See ya. Bye.